Hey, how's it going, bro? Appreciate you taking some time out here today with me. How's things going?
Man, things are going good. We're doing really good. Just getting ready for the holiday season, enjoying my time with the kids and family.
Yeah, I know all about that. I got some kids myself. But like talking about your last fight, right? Huge win, arguably one of the biggest wins of your career. I just want to know your emotions finally getting your first UFC victory.
Yeah, it was back in June. I was hoping to fight before then, or before now. Uh, it hasn't gotten to happen yet. Still waiting for the next assignment, but it's all good. Um, yeah, I think it was a relief. But then again, it just the change was mindset. Like my first two UFC fights, like it was more. First one was just excitement and just going out there. Second one, there was a couple of things, mindset wise that were going on. And so this one, we were just wanting to go out there and just have as much fun as possible and be as relaxed as possible. And I think it showed. And so just and it helped me execute the game plan exactly as we planned. Was go out there, out wrestle them, out grapple them, and get it done early, and we were able to do that. So yeah, emotionally, like it was great. It was a fantastic weekend. It was also Father's Day weekend, so that was also cool to bring the W home for my daughters and everything like that. So
Yeah, I mean, you looked like a brand new fighter out there, right? I mean, the first two fights you had were against absolute killers. Actually, Jekka Sergi was also a killer in his own right, beating a ton of people, finishing all of them. But you looked completely different. You didn't look as timid as you were in those two fights, and you brought a different like tenacity in that fight. And did you we were back against the wall. Is that kind of what kind of helped you get over that the first two fights and really put on your best performance?
what's funny is I went into that fight. I didn't care if I won, lost. It didn't matter. Like I didn't care if that was going to be my last fight in UFC. Like I was perfectly content saying, if I lose that fight, I'm retiring. I'm done. I don't care. I'll go into boxing. Like what people don't realize is like I actually before I got signed to UFC, I went in boxing. I my first boxing debut was against a kid who was 11-1, and I beat him pretty handedly. So I actually had a lot of like boxing people wanting me to come on and start boxing. So like I had different avenues I could have taken after that fight. And so I went in perfectly okay with whatever the result was going to be. Like I didn't care. And I think that actually made me be a little bit more relaxed. Like it wasn't like, oh, my back's against the wall. If I win this, if I lose this, I'm gone. And, everything like went up in flames. It was more like, okay, whatever happens, happens. Who cares? And like, say whatever you want about like having that mindset, but for me it worked and it relaxed me, and I was okay with whatever result happened, which allowed me to just go out on my shield. um, and that's kind of the mindset now I have going into every fight is like two things can be true at once. Like I want to win, but also I don't care what happens. and,
Right.
and so I think having that mindset and that shift in mindset makes me more dangerous in the cage. It makes me more fluid and just in my own zone because I'm no longer putting stress on myself that I've done in the past.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's different, right? A lot of people like the stress and that they put themselves, it makes them perform. But also in your case, it helps you be free and able to do things that, a lot of people won't do. You're able to take risks like you did in your last fight, and it worked out in the end. I mean, you got a great submission victory, and you look great in there. But like, what can we expect of you moving forward? Did you get a new deal? Are you still on your first contract? How's that going?
Still on the first contract. From my understanding, is when the next one will get a new contract. But once again, like I'm perfectly okay with whatever. Like I have my own goals and internal goals, but like I am just kind of having fun with it. You know, like I want a good, fun, exciting fight. I preferably like to fight a grappler, so I can show a different skill set than I've shown in my other fights. But I've been working on a ton of new things. I've got some new little tricks that are really, really clicking in the gym right now. And so yeah, you'll see even more and a little bit more dynamic, you know, sequences, and learning, not really learning because I've been in the sport for a really long time, but I'm just flowing a little bit different right now in like going from grappling to striking to grappling, and you know, all the various ranges. And so it's fun, and having all this long time off from like June until now, I've been able to really focus on uh, just shoring up different things and playing around. And so I go to the gym every day with a notebook, and I write notes, and I have goals of what I want to do, what I want to try. And having like a teammate like Wonderboy, I can spitball with him, and I can spitball with Coach T. And so there's like a couple things we're adding to my game that, like, to be quite honest, it's been revolutionary. Like I'm doing things that I haven't done in you know, my career. I think we'll see some, you know, cool little tricks that I'll pull out in my next fight.
So, talking about your training with Wonder Boy, how is that? Being able to pick the mind of someone who's done great things in the sport and just being able to learn and grow alongside him and help him get ready for his fights.
Yeah, it's been a blast. You know, his last fight against Buckley, like, to be quite honest, like he still showed he had it, and he was winning until he got caught, and it's just one of those unfortunate things of the sport. But we had a blast that fight camp. Like, he and I, we worked on a lot of different things. You know, we got to do. I was able to help him with some grappling aspects of the fight, and striking wise as well. And so for us, like, it's fun because we'll kind of like help coach each other, and we'll be like, hey, what if you try that? What if you try that? And then, uh, you know, we'll do it, and it's cool when it works. Like when I'm like, I'll tell him, hey, try this right here, and then he'll do it, and it's amazing. Like he'll hit it like without even having to drill it. And then he can give me advice on, hey, do this, and then it just works. And so it's cool having a teammate like that who understands like my style, understands my flow, and vice versa, because we're able to just spitball and build off of each other. And we have a couple other guys, that were all American, you know, wrestlers that we're throwing in the mix as well, and they're monsters. They're coming up. You'll see them in the UFC probably the next year or two. Um, but yeah, it's like, but we're not a huge team either. So we have that small team environment where we're all just kind of helping each other, and we're all growing at the same time. And being under the leadership of Coach T and Steven, you know, I've been with them now for 5 years, and I have complete trust and faith in them that they're never going to lead me astray and put me down the wrong path.
Yeah, I mean, they seem like the guys that really will want you to succeed and not really kind of just throw you into the fire and things like that. But talking about how you're growing and you're learning new things, you're trying new things out. What what fighter at 145 pounds would be able to help you bring that out in your next fight? Like, so who would you want to fight against that you think would be able to showcase everything that you've been training, everything that you've kind of learned over these last couple months?
So if it's for me to show off my striking, um, you know, there's a couple guys like lower in the kind of where I'm at, like Eric Silva. Like, I'd be able to really show off and showcase my striking. AJ Cunningham, a couple of those guys like on the lower level. In terms of like a bigger name guy, like, I think Ryan Hall would be a really fun fight. We've trained together, actually quite a bit in the past. I think Ryan Hall would be a really fun fight, for his comeback. Granted, I understand like he's also got quite a bit of name value, and so for him to fight a guy like me really doesn't do him much good. But yeah, I want a guy. I would love a guy who's got a little bit more of a grappling focus, so I can showcase a little bit more of my striking. And then if we do go to the ground, it'd be more of a high level ground fight. Um, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. I did get offered a fight, but I was traveling at the time. So I was offered a pretty high profile name actually. Uh, but I got, I was traveling, and then he's now fighting in UFC 310 instead. So,
Oh,
so yeah, I mean, I did have an offer for no, actually the Macau card this weekend, but like I said, I was traveling, so I couldn't take the fight.
well, I mean, you're not fighting like no names. I mean, technically, Joannis and Brito, look at how he's doing. Gene Silva, look at how he's doing. And Jekka he had a lot of, name value coming into his debut as well. So it's not like they're throwing you
Well,
with
I mean, it
guys that no
wasn't
one
his
knows.
debut. That wasn't his debut because he knocked
Oh,
out
you're right.
Sanders.
Right, right.
Um,
You're
and
right.
then
My
and then
bad.
he fought the road to the UFC. I don't know if those like that if the finals count as actual UFC
No,
fights, but they were on. It was on a UFC event.
yeah, no, the finals are it counts as a pro fight, but his debut would be his next fight.
Yeah, so
But
the Lucas.
either way, he was surging. He had a lot of promise as well. It's not like you're fighting a bunch of nobodies that people really had no idea. They're giving you some good fights and against really tough competitors. And does that give you some promise, knowing that the UFC kind of, they kind of believe in you? You know what I mean? They're not just throwing you against some no-name guys. They're giving you the opportunity to fight some guys that they believe are like some good prospects.
Yeah, yeah, and those type of wins, like it was funny because that whole week with Jekka, everyone was like, oh yeah, he's got all this steam behind him, he's got all this hype, and a couple guys like that worked for the UFC, they were like, yeah, man, just take that hype away from him, like derail him, like this is your chance to really like derail the hype train. And so I was like, yeah, sure. I'll take it. It was actually funny because leading up to that fight, like I was getting a ton of like Indonesian, fans sending me like skull and crossbone and then the Indonesian flag and all that. And it just cracked me up. And then after the fight, I got a bunch of messages. And so like I put them in translators and it was like, oh, good fight, man. Like, no hate. Yeah, yeah. Like there wasn't like a whole. I was surprised because I was like, oh, dude, all these Indonesian fans are gonna hate me for beating their guy, but no, they were all really really cool and a lot of positivity from them, which was nice.
Yeah, I mean, is that normal? Like, I mean, you haven't really fought, at least in the UFC, you haven't really fought anybody from the US. Have you gotten a lot of fans from other countries kind of hitting you up and just giving you a bunch of like hate mail?
Yeah, like the Brazilians, and it's funny because like I lived in Brazil. I started MMA in Brazil, and so it's funny. I always crack up when the Brazilians will send me stuff, and they'll send me in Portuguese. Like I don't know the language, and like I know exactly like what they're saying to me. I've got a few brothers who actually are like fluent. I'm not. I was the older brother, so I wasn't. I didn't like really take the time to learn Portuguese when I was out there, and I was only there for 2 years. They were there for 4. But yeah, so like I've got family members who speak Portuguese like fluently, and so always like if there's a word I don't know, I'll send it to them like, oh yeah, dude, they're like ripping you, like just ignore it, or they'll be like, oh okay, this is what they said, and they're like, this is how I would respond, and so like it's funny, like it becomes like the trash talk from the Brazilians becomes like a whole family affair where we all like will respond to the message, or they'll write it for me. My brothers will write the message for me, like this is what you should say, and I'm like, okay, cool, and yeah, the Brazilians they trash talk quite a bit, and I would think that they'd want to get behind me more, being quasi Brasileiro, like I grew up there, but no, they don't. No, I should say all of them. There's quite a few that are still like very supportive of me. And my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach, Giva Santana, he's Brazilian as well. So I do love the Brazilian fans, and I do love Brazil. I wouldn't mind fighting in Brazil, but I don't think they're going back to Brazil until May-ish is usually when they go back.
Yeah. All right. But so moving forward, when can we expect you to see you inside the octagon, or when would you like to kind of get a fight in 2025?
2025, I wouldn't mind February. I think they're going back to Seattle, or they're not going back. They're going to Seattle. I think February 22nd is one of the dates. That'd be really cool. My family lived in Seattle for 10 years. Um, so I don't know. The other thing is I wouldn't mind sharing a card with Wonderboy as well and kind of doing like the whole fight camp together. Uh, so that'd be really fun and a cool little experience because he's never had a teammate on the same card as him that trains with him every day. I mean, him and Weidman have shared cards together, but um, so it'd be really cool for us to have fights on the same card. I think he was saying he wanted to fight like April or March. So really, like, I'm not trying to force it. I would like to fight soon, but I'm okay. Like I have a great high paying job outside of the UFC. So it's not like I'm strapped for money and need to fight in order to feed my family. So I can fight on the UFC schedule. In the meantime, I'm just going to keep getting better and keep studying the game.
Well, it's good that you have the ability to just kind of play it by ear and let things happen when they happen. Um, Before I let you go, I want to know if you have a message for your fans that would be eagerly awaiting for you to step back inside the octagon.
Yeah, just expect new things. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun fight. But like I said, I'm more of an opportunist. So if I'm going to fight a striker, expect for me to take the fight to the ground. If I'm going to fight a grappler, expect for me to keep the fight on the feet. So it just depends on what the UFC gives me. But either way, like I'm excited to get back in that fight camp mode and study my opponent and break down film and which is something like I kind of shied away from in the past. The Jekka fight, like we actually really did study a lot of film and knew his tendencies and knew where we could exploit his weaknesses. And so I'm excited for my next fight to be able to do that same thing. So that's all I'm really looking forward to is breaking down the fight footage and coming up with a game plan and implementing the game plan.